Well, hello everyone. Welcome to Getting Started with Technical Analysis. Today we are going to talk price patterns. Specifically, we're going to talk about pennants or triangle patterns, which is a consolidation type of pattern. My name is Barbara Armstrong. I'm a coach with Schwab. Delighted that you guys have all chosen to join me here today. If you are not following me on X, I invite you to do so. My handle at Barbara Armstrong CS, posting content there on a daily basis that we think you'll find helpful. And it's a way for me to be able to communicate with you outside of webcasts like this. We also have Cameron May with us in the chat today. He's a fellow coach and is posting content regularly. Also, his handle at Cameron May CS. So feel free to join us there outside of webcasts like this. Know that everything that we do in this class is for general information purposes only, none of it to be construed as a recommendation. We are going to look at a bunch of charts today. Those charts will be on the Paper Money software application on the Thinkorswim desktop platform. Say that 3 times fast. And it is a great place to learn. Make sure you understand what you're doing and then how to do it on the Thinkorswim platform in Paper Money before you consider going to your live account. And know that if we buy a stock and use a stop order, we may not get stopped out at the price, that we're anticipating. And with stop limit orders, we may not get stopped out at all. So that's important to remember. Keep in mind, today we're talking about pennants and triangles. So we're spending, 3 weeks on different price patterns. Today, I probably looked at over 200 stocks getting ready for today's class in looking for pennants and triangles. And I saw a lot of channels and reversal patterns. Isn't that always the way? And a lot of flags, especially bear flags, which we talked about last week. But today I did find some pennants and triangles. So we're going to talk about those. And if you're new to all of this and thinking like, I don't even know what a pennant or a triangle is, well, you're in exactly the right place because this is an introductory level class. We will place an example trade, but we're going to go out and look at a bunch of these patterns first. And so we're going to discuss what a pennant or a triangle is. We're going to look at a bunch of charts, and then we're going to place an example trade. So, price patterns occur because we have different horizontal and or diagonal support lines creating a pattern for us. And, when we talk about triangles or wedges, that pattern tends to look like, just let me get my drawing tool going here. Oops, I was posting something on X, can you tell? Tends to look like this, or maybe like this. But it's where we have a horizontal or a diagonal line and, 2 diagonal lines that start coming together. And sometimes when we look at the pattern, it's kind of like this, and it hasn't come together fully, but it's just heading in that direction. So each pattern has its own unique construction. Last week we looked at flags. So, and flags that look like kind of this, or, in the case of a downtrending flag, which we've seen lots of examples of this past week, like this. So, patterns have a certain construction that we are looking for, and they take place over a given time frame. And you may say, well, what is that time frame? Well, it depends on the time frame you're looking at. So it could be over minutes, it could be over days, it could be over months, and it could be over years. And depending on what type of trader or investor you are, or what kind of time frame you're looking to trade within, you may want to look at a different time frame. Most of what we're going to look at today is, where each candle is 1 day. So we'll be looking at a 3-month, 6-month, kind of 1 year time frame. And these patterns can give us signals that might indicate either an entry or an exit, or a guideline for establishing a target. And we're going to talk specifically about how these triangle or pennant patterns might help us do exactly that. Okay, and I've already covered time frame here. And, and then we're going to look at signals. So, and talk about when we might interpret something as a signal for either a swing trade, a trend trade. We'll look at those, and maybe it's not a swing trade or a trend trade, but we have another target in mind based on where we see, based on this pattern. Okay. So when we look at this triangle or pennant pattern, what are we seeing? Well, in this case, we're seeing a series of lower highs. And then we're also seeing at the same time a series of higher lows. So we've got lower highs and higher lows following an uptrend. And so some might expect that after this period of consolidation, that it might break out to the upside. And sometimes it does, but not always. Sometimes, and we'll probably look at some examples of this, we might see it kind of come down this way and maybe bounce and then break to the downside. Okay, so this trend, it can be bullish and it can be bearish. It can be any time frame. Typically, and this is if we're looking at, a daily chart, we're looking at something that has taken a month to form. Okay. And often it's following a strong trend. So we have this strong uptrend and then it kind of consolidates. I kind of, compare that to biking up a hill. And then you just kind of want to coast for a minute and catch your breath. And you could see this as the stock kind of catching its breath. And then we're looking for either a break of resistance, which is this ceiling here, which is this, or the break of support, or a break of support. Okay, and the target would be if we measure the width of the triangle. So if we say, okay, here's our triangle, we're going to measure from here to here. When this breaks to the upside, however long this is, let's say it's $10 wide, we'd expect then about a $10 move to the upside. And that's where we might put a target when it breaks out. Okay. Or if it breaks to the downside, then we're expecting it to move $10 to the downside. The width of this channel. So we're going to go and look at some of these. Are there any questions on this so far? Okay. I'm just having a quick glance at the chat. And by the way, I want to thank all of you who come to this class, show up early, and who are so participatory in the chat. So, welcome to Paul and Belle and Jack and loves to invest. Love that handle. Brown Buffalo and Sharon and Scott and Alfred and the rest of the gang. Thank you all for being here. And we've got AP 514. He double checks my math for me, which I really appreciate. So let's go out and look at some examples on the charts. And, here's one on Walgreen Boots Alliance. Now, this is an inexpensive stock. It's currently trading at $11, but what we're seeing here when we look at this is a high and then a lower high. And then, it seems to be just kind of, it just can't get the message. It keeps bonking its head up against this horizontal resistance level or ceiling. But at the same time that we have this diagonal line, we also have a series of higher lows where it came, it has come down multiple times, and now it seems to be bouncing off the ceiling. And so if one were to place a trade, could we buy a put and put a target, down where we think this support level might be, with the expectation that it might come back to this support level? And what type of trade might that be? Well, we could buy a put potentially. And when we buy a put, our expectation is that we're going to just extend this to the right, that this stock might continue to come down. And so where might we put a target? Maybe around this 9.80 level, maybe even $10. So might that be a potential? And some say, well, I'm looking for that entry when it breaks out, and you could do that. Now, is it also possible to trade it within the pattern? Some traders might say yes. Yeah. Oh, and somebody is saying in the chat that Walgreens Boots Alliance has a buyout offer. Okay, so that's Walgreens Boots Alliance. Let's look at Siri. This is another stock that I say is, it's kind of in the more affordable section. It's currently trading at $22.29. And if we look at this short term, we see again, we had a higher high, and we're seeing a lot of this on the charts lately. It's not always this way, but a higher high and then a lower high. And then we had a low, a higher low, higher low, higher low. And today, what's it doing? It's breaking below. And so on this one, could we have a swing target? We could. Or if we wanted to measure a target, could we say, okay, I'm going with this line and saying, okay, we've gone from 29 to 20. And actually, this is the high and the low, so we could just subtract one from the other. But if you take this line and when you draw it, you say, okay, that's an $8.27 move. So given it's breaking down here, what's $8.27 below this low? Well, it's off our chart. We'd have to add more to the bottom. So if we say, okay, well, here's our 24.26. Oh, let's draw a line here. So if this line's around 22.83, then we might take this $8 and change, call it, for ease of calculation, $8, and put a target of, 22 minus 8 of around $14. Now, could we also do a shorter term strategy, maybe buy a put and say, hey, in an average day, this stock moves about $1.10. And could we say, hey, if it goes down another $1.10, we don't need it to move that whole $8. If it goes down $1.10, get me out. Yeah. So we could do that also. So I'm just going to put a little X beside Siri because we might come back to that one. Okay, so that was Siri. Let's look at a longer time frame on Siri also. Because, I tend to look at the right side of the chart because that's what's happening now. But did we have another pattern occurring here? Oh, sorry, let me get my drawing tool. Where, we had a series of higher lows again, but if we came from here, a series of lower highs. And then it broke to the upside, but it didn't stay very long, did it? So, we can practice, just going back and looking at charts over a longer time frame also. Let's look at Adobe. So with Adobe, and this is just, again, if we're honing in on this current time frame, we had this stock gap down on earnings. And then, if we consider this to be the high, lower high, came down to a low, higher low. Now we're just ahead of earnings. But it looks like, this may be acting as a support level, and we'll just have to see, if this breaks to the upside or downside, or maybe it'll just stay, but earnings on this one is tomorrow after the market close. But we've got another pennant or triangle pattern happening there also. How about Disney? So if we come and look at Disney, and I'm going to just take these off and then we'll look at this again. But, we saw a stock that gapped up on this earnings and then came up to a high. But then we saw, it kind of consolidate and start to move to the downside. We had a lower high, another lower high. But after it made this pullback, we had a low, higher low, higher low, higher low. And then it broke out. It broke below the support level. Now, some might have been expecting, because it had been moving quite bullishly before it started consolidating, the expectation might have been that it might have broke to the upside. But that isn't how this played out. And so sometimes when things are still in the pattern, it pays us to take, our right hand and then our left hand and sit upon them until we have confirmation. And how might we measure this move? Well, we might say, if we're coming from here to here, so how big a move is that? $11.32. So if we come here and say, wow, if we're expecting this to move maybe $11.32 to the downside, if it breaks out, it's pretty much made that move, hasn't it? Now, do these patterns always play out? They do not. There's no guarantee, on any of these. Like, this could have pulled down for one day and then rallied and come back up. So sometimes when there's a lot of uncertainty in the market, people will look at shorter time frames because there is so much uncertainty. Okay, so that's Disney. And one of the things I'd encourage you to do as you're watching is just get your drawing tools out and draw some of these lines on the chart yourself. Then we had Tesla. It back in October, it gapped up after its earnings, and then after the election, it went on quite a tear and was up dramatically. And then we saw a series of lower highs. And I find that when I draw things on the chart, it really helps me lead my eye and determine if, what I'm thinking I'm seeing is actually what I'm seeing. So we saw this series of lower highs, but a series of similar lows. And it looked like it was going to bounce here too. And then it broke down. And now what kind of pattern are we seeing? Something totally different, right? No more pennant. It broke below. And again, and we'll draw this on the chart, but now we see more of a bear flag, right? Yeah. And, and this is why we don't want to look also at charts just in isolation. We want to be aware of what's going on in the news of, because Elon Musk, founder of Tesla, is a pretty controversial person globally. And it some would argue it's impacting the price of the stock. And so that doesn't mean that you can't profit from that information, but you have to be aware of it. You have to be aware of it. Okay, so that's Tesla. Oh, and if we were going to measure that potential move, just let me draw that one on the chart also. Here we go. So this was about a $100 move. And so if we come here and say, hey, if this was to move $100 to the downside, about 100, did it make that move? It did. And then some. You know, from this level here, when it broke below at 376, it's now at 232. So it's come a long way past that. But had a trader put that in as a target, might they have reached it? Yes, they would have. Okay, so that was Tesla. How about Synopsys? How do you find the pencil to draw the line? Good question. Okay, so you come up to drawing tools here. And if we're doing a line, a diagonal line, I choose this drawing here. And let's kind of back this up to a 1-year chart. And so here, this is a much bigger, this is a pattern that started last July and it broke out of this pattern in February. So this took many months. And we saw, you know, it hit this high here of 624 and then pulled back. And then we saw higher lows, lower highs. And, you know, we had this one out here, which was kind of an outlier. You know, so you just want to kind of try and get it to touch as many points as you can. And then when you go to draw it, I left click and then you just drag and then left click again when you want the line to be complete. So, you know, if we wanted to draw a line, we've gone from 624 down to, oh, what's that price at 458? That's a 161 point move. And so, you know, what might a target be if we started here around 493 and went down 161? Well, we'd have to add more space at the bottom of our chart to make that 161. Now, if we wanted to add more space, could we? Yes, we're going to come up to our sprocket and we're going to come to our price axis and say, hey, we don't need the upside right now. We want 20% to the downside. So now I can erase this line and do it again. Say 160-ish is like 161. Hard to get it exact. Okay, that's close. So that might be a target price right here, which would be, you know, under 350. And again, do you have to make the target that long? No, you could do a trade and just say, hey, if this starts to go down again, in an average day, this moves about $18, $17.98. So my target would be for it to fall by $17 or $18. And we talked about that back when I used to teach long options, that, you know, where you had a modest target and this one ATR is the average amount this stock moves in a day over the last 14 days. And if you want a more specific, detailed description of what that is, you can just come to ATR and click on this little question mark and it will tell you, you know, that, you know, and the default is 14 days. And that's what we've gone with, because when we put in that kind of target, we're looking at a shorter term trade, or that's the goal. Okay. Okay. So there's Synopsys. How about Charter? Yeah. So Troy is saying, could that also be used as a target to the upside? Absolutely. Absolutely. So like if we look at Charter and it hasn't broken out yet, right? And so some might say, well, it's moving down. And what if I bought a put expecting it to continue to move down and put my target here around 344? So you're trading within the pattern. You could do that, or you could, some traders might do that. It not, again, a recommendation, or you could say, okay, this is about an $85 move. And so could we come in here and duplicate this and say, hey, if it moves to the upside, here could be our target. Or if it breaks out to the downside, this could be our target. And we don't know which way it's going to break yet. And in fact, it could spend another month, coiling, continuing to coil. And this pattern started in November, and we're still in that pattern, and it's March. So it's been months consolidating. And, we've got high, lower high, lower high, and then lows, higher lows, higher lows. But so far, no break. Yeah. So good question, Troy. Okay. That's Charter. How about we look at WBD, Warner Brothers. So Warner Brothers, now this is a stock that's been downtrending, had what appeared to be a good earnings announcement. It took off, hit this high of 1270. So this is kind of in the cheap seats from a stock price perspective. And then, it started to pull back. And again, here's another one. We're seeing higher lows, lower highs. And has it broken out yet? Either way, no. So, but we can extend this to the right just by, let's see, when you do something all the time, right click. Yeah. So now if we wanted to measure a potential target when it breaks out, now could we come here and say, okay, whoops, I didn't get from the high here. So that's about a $2.86, call it a $3 almost move, 297. So could we come here, say, hey, if it breaks out, it could go up by 297. So could that be a target? That's close. And then can we replicate that line and say, or if it breaks to the downside, it could go down this far. And if you want to activate it, if you didn't get it quite right, you can move it up. So you can move your lines around. Okay. So, but right now it's kind of in between, isn't it? And so if you wanted to trade the breakout either to the upside or the downside, what might a trader do? A trader might say, well, I don't have a breakout yet, and so I'm going to wait. Okay. Okay, so that is WBD. Did we already look at Charter? I have so many ticker symbols here. Yeah, we did already look at Charter. Okay, let's look at Take-Two. Okay, so here's another one where, if we look back in time, we saw this pattern happening, right? Where it was lower highs, higher lows, and then it did break out to the upside. And so if we were looking at this, and if you want to kind of spread your chart out, you can just grab this bar on the right-hand side and kind of push it up. And we saw how big a move. Basically a $32-ish, $33 pullback. And when it broke to the upside, did we get a $33 move to the upside? We did. Took a bit. And some might have said, hey, when it came up here and started going sideways, they might have said, hey, I got $30 worth. I'm going to call it good. Now, if they had stayed in it, would they have eventually hit their target? They would have. You know, if they had a target, maybe they just might have used that as an example of as an entry, you know, to buy the stock and hold it. Now we had a gap up on earnings, and then it hit a high here, and now we're seeing lower highs. And from this low, could this be, you know, forming, you know, a new support level? So could this be a diagonal support line and a diagonal resistance line? Now, some might also say, hey, you see this diagonal resistance line, like I see it as having broken below support, because, you know, this hung out here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 days. 10 days. You know, it hung out around this 207 level for quite a while, and then it broke below, which prompted me to draw this line. But what might old support become? It could become new resistance, old floor, new ceiling. And so some might look at this and say, hey, until I see it break above this and then above this, you know, I am not waving my bullish flag yet. Okay. Okay. So that is a take a 2. And then let's look at Synopsys. Now, Synopsys, I think we'd already looked at and put our potential target in there. Let's go back and look at, because I wanted to do an example trade. Let's look at take 2. No. No, we're bouncing and we're just on the verge of earnings. We're still within the pattern on WVD. We're still within the pattern on Charter. Was it Siri was breaking down? So Siri, and this is interesting because with Siri, when I first looked at this, it was way below this line, because we can see here that during the course of the day, it has come all the way down to this 21.95 level. And so one might look at this and say, you know, could this be a breakout or might it be a fake out? And so some might want to wait for another day. But what if you were planning on going on a vacation and you said, like, I don't want to wait for another day? You know, with everything happening in the market, I could see Siri continuing to go to the downside. So what we could do is put in a conditional order to buy a put if our expectation is bearish. And if we look at this and say the low today is 21.95. So if it goes 20 cents below that, I'd like to buy a put. And then if we wanted to put in a swing target, that could be this previous low, or we could say, hey, this 1 ATR in an average day, this over the last 14 days, this stock has moved about $1.10. And so if we wanted to use that as an example, we're going to switch this to our scratch pad. And here's a bearish example. And we are going to say our today's low, 21.95. So conditional entry below 21.95. And let's say by 20 cents. So if the stock went to 21.75, we'd want to enter this trade. And this is Siri. And what might our target be? And our target would be that 21.75 minus $1.10. So that would be $20.65. Now, if trade goes against us, and usually what some traders might consider doing is saying, hey, if it goes, $1.10 above that candle's high, then we want to exit. But we don't know what that's going to be yet. So we're just going to put in this conditional order, and if and when it fills, then we'll put an exit in. So we're going to come to the trade tab. And we're going to come out to April. We're going to look at buying a put. And so we're going to buy this 22 put, which is our first strike in the money. It's a 99 to $1.19. So, and we don't know, we only want to buy this if it goes below 20.65. And so we know that if the stock falls, we're going to pay a little bit more for it than that. And we're okay with that. So we're just doing this as an example. So we want to buy a single, and we are going to put in an opposite order. Now I'm going to make this a little smaller so you can all easily see it. We're going to make this actually a market order that's good till canceled, because we may well not get in today. We may not even get in tomorrow, but if and when CRE goes at or below 21.75, we would like to buy that put. And when do we want to exit? Well, we don't know exactly what this option will be worth, but if and or when CRE goes down to 20.65, then we would like to sell it and take whatever gain that there may be. 20.65. Confirm and send. So we want to buy a put on CRE because we're bearish, right? Right. Okay. But we only want to buy that put if CRE goes below today's low by 20 cents. And then we want to sell it if it goes down about the average amount it has moved over the last 14 days, which is $1.10. If it goes down another $1.10, or when it goes down another $1.10 and gets to 20.65, we would like to buy it back. And it's saying here our max profit. Our max profit would occur if the stock went to zero. How much could we lose? The entire amount we're paying to buy the put. So we're going to put that in our, I don't know if I have a long put category in here, long puts. And this is based on a breakout of a pennant pattern with a conditional entry. So if we're looking at it and going, why did we do that? Well, we have a little note, and this is just a note from us to us. Now, if you are saying, well, that's really cool, but how do I see that note? One of the ways you can see the note is when you come up to the monitor tab and look at your working orders. We can see if we click on this, what our note is. Okay, and if you're newer to Thinkorswim, you can, I have a series. One of the things you'll want to do is subscribe to this channel. And by subscribing to the channel, this is the channel, Trader Talks from Schwab Coaching. It's in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. But when you first get here, what you'll see is whatever is currently playing. If you come to playlists, there are classes dedicated to just getting you oriented. There's a getting started with technical analysis, but I created also a series of short videos. One, there's some example trading plans So here's the long call with 1 ATR target. So I still have to do the long put version here, but this gives you an idea of how this trading plan might work. But if you keep scrolling down to the very bottom, there's a whole bunch of short videos just on how to add a script or customize your monitor tab. There's also one on using notes, 7 minutes long. So if you wanted to do some binge learning, these are all short videos. I've also started and right now they're in here, a series of short videos on candlestick patterns. So the first one, which is now here, is what is a hammer? And there are, a dozen and a half different patterns. So, by the end of the week, you'll see the next couple in this series. And most of these will be, under 5 minutes long, 3 to 5 minutes long. Okay, so guys, that's our class for today. What I'd ask of you is if you could hit the like button, that would be much appreciated. It helps move this up in the trading algorithms so that more people can find this content. It also lets Cameron and I know that you found this valuable. As Cameron likes to say, it sounds like applause to us. And it certainly does. There's also a survey today. And that survey is 2 questions. 1 is, I hated it and I'm never coming back. 10 is, I loved it and I'm going to keep coming, and everything in between. And then you have the ability to put comments in. So if there's a topic you'd like me to cover, feel free to put that in there. Let me know, did you like the pace? Did you like the number of examples? All that kind of stuff. I promise if you fill it out that I'll read each and every comment, and so will our management team. So like, subscribe, fill out the survey. This is where I get a little bossy. And last but not least, follow us on X, Barb Armstrong CS, and Cameron May CS. Also know that no coach will ever offer you a Bitcoin deal, a crypto deal, will never offer you private education for a fee, or perish the thought. Ask that you give us your password information so we can trade the account on your behalf and split the profits. These are all scammers. So the real Barb Armstrong and Cameron May will never reach out to you with any of these kind of deals. No coach will on X. So just beware. And in any event, guys, enjoy the rest of your day. I'll see you in a webcast coming up soon. Take care, everyone. Bye for now.